scrape over with my hand. Again, line up all the holes, top and side, and click. Boom, the whole tray, 264 seeds drop all at once. I'm going to show you the step-by-step process that we use for our seeding. This is inside our passive solar greenhouse, and it's one of the head of operations here on Twitter Creek Gardens. We do all of our seed sowing in this greenhouse, and this station that I'm in front of here is our paper chain station. So I have a compost sifter, I have a bin here where I do my soil mix, and I basically use the soil mix right out of New Organic Grower. So the first step here is sifting compost. This is compost that we make here on farm. I use spent grain from the local brewery. We do garden scraps. We have both pig and chicken manure that we use. Sometimes we collect seaweed, so it's a whole mixture of things. First, I'm just gonna use, this is just hardware cloth in a wooden frame, and I'm sifting out, I'm trying to sift out any pine cones that may have gotten in there. There's a rock. We just want a pretty fine soil mixture for our paper pot transplant trays and for our soil blocking trays. So this whole system is really lightweight. It hinges up. We have an eye bolt bolted into the concrete. And then underneath we have the two bays. So here's our sifted compost bay. It looks really fine and nice after sifting it. And then we have a more or less empty bay that will do our mixture. So normally if we're making a big batch, we do 4 buckets of potting soil to 1 bucket of compost to 1 cup of the amendment mixture, which we use bone meal, blood meal, and green sand, 1 to 1 to 1. So 4 buckets potting soil, 1 bucket compost, 1 cup of the amendment mixture. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to do 1 bucket of potting soil and a 1/4 bucket of compost. And you know, depending on the scale, it could be 4 wheelbarrows to 1 wheelbarrow, or 4 truckloads to 1 truckload. So whatever it is, it's 4 to 1 ratio, potting soil to compost, and then you just have to scale up on your amendment. So here's our, we just keep a small bucket full of our 1 to 1 to 1 blood meal, bone meal, green sand mixture, and a measuring cup. So I'm just doing a 1/4 batch right now, so I'll do a 1/4 cup of the powdered amendments. Since this is just a 1/4 batch, I'm just gonna mix it with my hands. We find when we're doing the Paperpot chains that we want our soil mixture just a little bit moist. I'm just going to add a little bit. And we move over to our seeding platform here. Same thing, just a frame on hinges. And inside I have all of my Paperpot transplant trays, the spreader bars, the spreader frames. Okay, I like having multiple spreader frames so I can, we have 4, so we can set up 4 trays at once, which is how many we're seeding today. I'm gonna do our spinach in 6-inch spacing Paperpot chains. Spreader bars sometimes are a little tricky to slide in the paper sleeve. And these are directional, so we just always make sure when I'm looking at it, spreader bar here, reading upright like a book, left to right. And then I have my spreader frame ready. Put the honeycombs right on those teeth. So it matters how you put your paper chain on the spreader frames. So it's the first line of chains, and then there's 1 dip in the teeth. So you want to make sure that they're all lined up. So once it's on the spreader frame, you pull out your spreader bars. You flip it. Into your tray, and then you're ready to fill with soil. So I'm going to prep 4 like this before I fill soil, just so I can kind of keep the stages of the process separate. So I'm going to line them all up side by side. Find that little bit of moisture when you're packing these help pack it in a little bit better, but not too wet because you don't want it to be clumpy. You want it to spread really easily. And once you feel like you have a good amount of fill on each of the trays, and once the soil is packed in really well, you've kind of got them settled in there. I like to hold the Paperpot chain in place because sometimes it'll lift up and your soil will fall out the bottom. So I hold the Paperpot chain in place and pull out the spreader bar. We have 4 6-inch Paperpot chain trays ready to seed. The nice thing about having this smooth surface is all of that mixed soil, just clean it up, right back in. The next step is using the Paperpot Co. dibbler. I just line up the divots or the dibblers in the chain. Just try to line up the first row, and then because they're made so well, pretty often with a little bit of adjusting occasionally, all of the dibbles go right into the cells. So we're just making a little indentation for the seeds to drop. So then you have a tray that's ready to seed. Same thing, I go through this whole step with all of the trays. I'm going to be doing that. Another reason we found it's really important to get as much soil filling with compressing the soil into the chain. It's important to do that because once you spread it, you want the dibbler to line up perfectly, and if you don't have enough soil, sometimes the chains can compress a little bit and then your dibbler has a harder time lining up. So that dropping and kind of tamping soil part of the process is important. And then this is when the Kwik Klik comes in. It's just a really basic unit. There's a bottom tray that the 264 holes in the bottom tray line up with the 264 cells in the Paperpot chain. And then you can buy different top plates depending on what size seed you're using. So we're gonna do spinach today. And so I have the 3 millimeter thick tray with a 5 millimeter diameter hole. And they send these little plates, these little sample plates. So you can see the different thickness of trays that they make. They make a 1.5, they make a 3, and a 6 mil. So each one doubling. Thickness plates, and then you can just put whatever seeds you want to use with the Kwik Klik system into these holes so you know you're ordering the right plate. So that's pretty handy little tool that they send with you when you're starting to order your system. And they actually have a seeding guide that they send you too, but I would encourage you, and they encourage you as well, to test your seeds first because not all seeds are created equal. And the way to do this is super slick. You just dump your seeds on the tray. And it's like that, I forget the name of the game, but it's like that game where you're just trying to fill all the holes with seeds. You kind of shake your seeds around. Make sure you want more seed than you're going to need so you can have some excess. Get all your holes filled. And then we line up our bottom tray, the bottom tray holes, with the chain. And once you feel good about lining it up, if you just kind of line up the top row and the side row, then you can feel pretty confident that the rest of yours are going to be lined up, and then it's a matter of bam. That tray felt a little tight, so there's these adjustment knobs on the bottom where you can loosen the compression between the two trays. So kind of get the seeds out of the holes and just test it. That feels a little bit better this time. Fill up all the holes again. Scrape over with my hand. Again, line up all the holes, top and side, and click. Boom, the whole tray, 264 seeds drop all at once. And dump your seed. Vermiculite is cheaper than potting soil and compost and amendments and all the things that we have in it, so it made sense to me that you would just do a vermiculite topper to cover up the seeds. So that's the next step. Do a nice coating of vermiculite on top. So I have my layer of vermiculite. Lay out my 4 trays. You want to make sure that you're soaking your soil all the way through, so uses a fair amount of water. The last step is labeling your trays. You think you're going to remember what you seeded, but you don't. Or I don't. So right when we seed them, we make sure that all of our trays are labeled. Done.